Welcome to Digging for Kryptonite, a Supergirl fan journey. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to discuss the Post-Crisis Matrix Supergirl is returning guest Mike Sangregorio. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Not to sound like Lex Luthor II here, and no, I'm not going to do an Australian accent, but this is, in many ways, quote-unquote, my Supergirl. This is the first Supergirl that I met in the pages of The Death of Superman when I first started on this journey. And even though I have now gravitated much more towards the Kara Zor-El cousin from Krypton iteration, because I do feel like that's a very compelling angle, that familial connection. Nevertheless, I will always have a lot of affection for this iteration of Supergirl. Now, from our earliest discussions about Supergirl coverage, this was something that you really raised your hand for this one. And so I just want to toss you the ball first. What has your experience been with this version of Supergirl? When did you first meet her, and what is it about her that's really resonated with you?
Yeah, I'm with you. This is my Supergirl. When someone says Supergirl, I picture Matrix, May for short, as Ma likes to call her. I never read the Peter David story, the Kara Zor-El, I can take it or leave it, but I always thought that this version of the character is great. And I love her because two things. One, the great Roger Stern, who I don't believe has ever written a bad comic, is her dad, for lack of a better term. And he really carries the narrative all the way through the couple of years we have her. But two, it's almost meta. Like, I love watching a core concept such as Supergirl have to work its way back into the narrative after Crisis on Infinite Earths, after the mandate that Clark has to be the only survivor of Krypton, and just everyone looking at this and saying, no, he needs her. And you get the world's most convoluted origin, bend over backwards, but you end up at the same place. You end up with someone who is recognizably Supergirl, who can carry her own book and whatever, but then she's quickly forgotten, right? I mean, once Peter David comes on, they go in a different direction. Linda Davers has her own book. I don't think Matrix is ever referenced in any of the show that comes later. It's like this character is resigned to that weird time in the early 90s where you and I happened to start reading. And for me, it's like, no, that's it. That's me. That protoplasm, that ginger chin strap, that's my Supergirl.
Okay. No, listen, I appreciate the passion for this version of the character. Yeah, this being this artificial life form made of protomatter. Created by the Lex Luthor of the Pocket Universe. Initially, quote unquote, programmed with the molecular matrix of the Lana Lang of that universe. Ultimately reverts back to her protomatter form at the conclusion of the Supergirl Saga by John Byrne, his last arc on the titles, and the arc that introduces this version of Supergirl. And then Superman brings her back to the farm to recuperate with the Kents. And we'll unpack all of this, but as far as the broadest strokes of her journey here, we do have this stretch where she will come to pose as Clark while Clark is off in space finding himself during the Exile storyline. But then after contact with the Eradicator device, becomes confused and comes to think that she actually is Superman, and they'll battle. And then Matrix will leave Earth and will be gone from the books for about 3 years before returning in Panic in the Sky and assuming the traditional Supergirl form that we know and striking up a very ill-advised romantic relationship with Lex Luthor II, which will continue throughout the death and return of Superman. And then in 94, we'll get this 4-issue miniseries written by Roger Stern, where the scales finally fall from her eyes and she realizes that Lex has just been using her.
Yeah.
And we finally get a payoff to everything that had been building up for years. You bring up a couple of interesting things here, and I definitely want to get into this. And I don't want to rehash too much because at the end of last year, towards the end of last year, we went through all of the Byrne material. And I gave my whole thesis about that era and how it was essentially putting the Superman mythology through this stress test. We were stripping away so much and then seeing what stuck or what came back in different ways. And in a lot of instances, and Supergirl is a perfect example, we get a version of Supergirl that's very divorced from what came before. This is not the cousin from Krypton. And in time, by the time we get to the early aughts with the Superman Batman arc by Jeff Loeb and Michael Turner, we will swing back to the cousin from Krypton. But we take our time getting there, and she goes through these various permutations. And I still maintain that that was a valuable exercise to go through for the creators and for the fans to kind of put the mythology through that test and see what was so undeniable that it would manifest, even if it manifested, or especially if it manifested in these different forms.
I agree completely. Yeah, I really do. I mean, I don't know that it had the best reason for, it's kind of forced in the beginning, but it is fun to watch the reinterpretations of these storied concepts and see what sticks and what doesn't. I mean, most notably is Luthor himself, right? It's like Lex Luthor got a complete reinvention, and for the most part, it's that version that's hung around for at least, 60-70% of what we've seen since then. So,
all that being said, it's weird. I mean, it's undeniably weird. I mean, as I was laying out this business about this proto-matter and molecular matrix and all of this business, it's weird. And
so weird.
Just so the audience knows, so in this episode, we're focusing on everything from her debut through that Roger Stern miniseries. Yeah. We're going to be covering the entire Peter David series in upcoming episodes a few weeks down the line. It's an 80-issue series, so I got a lot of reading to do. I need a little bit more time, so we're going to get to that.
It's much longer than 80 if you include Fallen Angel.
I will reference Fallen Angel, and I have read Fallen Angel, but I'm not going to go too crazy. One of the things that I'm always trying to balance is sort of what we really need to cover to tell the story completely, what I have the interest in, and where I think there's appetite from the audience. And I don't know that I could justify a Fallen Angel episode because I just don't know that the audience is there for that. But yeah, I mean, by the time we get to the Peter David series, then we have the Matrix merging with Linda Danvers and forming this Earthborn Angel. And not to jump to that conversation still to come, but what you're going to see in that Peter David series is at least some of the pre-crisis trappings coming back because, like I said, she merges with Linda Danvers. And we have Fred and Edna, and we have a version of Comet. And so it's still very much its own thing in terms of this Earthborn Angel business, but you are now bringing back in some of those pre-crisis trappings and some of those familiar aspects of the character. But yeah, this Matrix business specifically, very much its own thing, never adapted. And, especially when you think about what was going on during this time, we had Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, which didn't do any Supergirl. I mean, they did an episode where Lois had powers, the Ultra Woman episode. They did a whole new Krypton storyline where they had this lost colony of Kryptonians, but never a Supergirl. And then, of course, we have Superman, the animated series, but they completely did their own thing where we had a Kara from a sister planet of Argo. So not technically a cousin, but like a cousin. So no multimedia adaptation, unless I'm missing anything, and I don't think I am, has touched this.
No.
And if they didn't touch it then, I'd be shocked if we ever saw this come to life in a film or TV show or animated project.
I disagree.
Oh, really?
I really do. Listen, we're living in weird times. I don't even know who owns DC right now, but at the beginning of what we read for this specifically tonight, there's all this discussion about no one is sure what May's pronouns should even be. There's this idea that she is, and I apologize if I use the wrong term, but she does not have a gender. She is, just a human with a soul, but made up of just the material. So as she decides what her identity is going to be, she develops it. So it's really interesting to watch. And, she doesn't just fall for the ginger chinstrap randomly. It's he pursues her and he says, wait a second, you're looking for human connection. Well, I can offer that in spades, and he gives her stability and a lot of other stuff. So I think this would be great for adaptation just because of going back to what you said, how strange it is,
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I would love, and I feel like an animated film would be great. I would love to see more animated films that were direct adaptations of comic book storylines because I feel like obviously something like Woman of Tomorrow is an exception where you're getting a live action film based on a specific comic book story. Normally we don't, but I feel like in the animated space, maybe there's a little bit more room for that. And if we ever got other stories from this era adapted faithfully to incorporate that, would be great. I don't share your optimism, but at the same time, I mean, how many times have we? I never thought this would happen. So you never know for sure. But yeah, this character lives for now, at least, just in the pages of these comics. I mean, one of the big things I was struck by, I went back and forth between, is this discussion going to be a segment or its own episode? Like, how much is there? Because, and this was one of the things I was really struck by when I actually sat down to map out, like, okay, what are we really going to look at here and talk about? And what are the actual Matrix-centric stories?
Yeah.
There's not that much. I think that's fair to say. And I don't want to speak for other fans, because I know there's love for this version of the characters. I hear from people, and obviously I do share that as well. And so I don't want to speak for them, but I would imagine maybe people have experienced something similar to me, where like in my head, I'm like, oh yeah, like there's all this Matrix stuff. But when you really drill down on it, there's not a ton. And what helped bring this into focus for me, I want to give a shout out to the website madeofmight.net. So they've broken down, and they've done this for various eras, but specifically for Matrix, they have a whole page breaking down literally all of Matrix's Matrix doesn't sound right, but all of the Matrix appearances throughout this period of time, from her introduction to the start of the Peter David series. And there are a bunch of instances where they'll note on the site, like, Matrix is on 2 pages, or this panel, or this block of appearances is generally unremarkable. Like, there's not, and so that was kind of interesting to me, because it's like, yeah, she's there a bunch, but there's not a lot that's really so focused on her. And I want to piggyback off of something you said a moment ago, because I co-sign on Roger Stern being the unsung hero of this era, because I really think, I'm sure this would not be its own episode if we didn't have that 4-issue miniseries in 1994, because that went so far, I think, towards fleshing out her character, finally bringing all the Lex Luthor II business to a head.
Yeah.
And also starting to get at these deeper, more fundamental philosophical questions about her nature and what it means to be alive. Like, Peter David will really run with that.
Yeah.
And in fact, I didn't ask you to read this, but Peter David and Terry Dodson did a 10-page story in Showcase 96, number 8. Mm-hmm. And this was right before the Peter David solo series started. And in that one, Supergirl is in and out of a hospital. She's saving people during this natural disaster. I think it's a hurricane. And so she's in and out of the hospital, and she's narrating the issue, and she's pondering these questions of life and death and what it means to be alive. And she gives this very oddly philosophical interview to a quite baffled reporter. It was humorous in its own right, but it was really starting to get at those deeper questions. And then obviously Peter David will run with that, and there's a whole religious angle to his series to come. But I very much feel like that Roger Stern miniseries was a bridge to that, and was starting to get at those questions. And so I think if you lift that out, then there's not a lot here. But with that, I think that really puts together an arc here.
Yeah, I agree. That 4-issue series, and again, you need the Team Luthor one shot. It's not great, but it's kind of acts as an issue 0. You can see Roger Stern doing what he does best, which is taking the story as it's been presented, flaws and all, that other writers have done, and saying, okay, wait a second, what is the story here? How can I tell it, and how can I make it compelling for both the characters and the readers? And he does that, because in 4 issues, you get a complete story, and it wraps up a lot of plot lines, and it delivers the emotional gut punch that you want. When she realizes what Lex has really been done, you feel for her, you feel her pain, and you can't say that about a lot of superhero stories in general.
Yeah. Well, so I guess the last kind of big picture thing, and then we'll get more specific into these individual stories. I don't know, maybe I have my answer based on what you've already said, but I mean, you prefer this to the Kara Zor-El iteration?
Yeah, I do, because, I mean, again, I can't say that I have read a ton of comics featuring Kara Zor-El. You know, when we started reading, May was Supergirl, and Peter David's run was fine, but the whole Angel thing, I don't know. Back then, I was I just read Marvel. And then, the show came out, the movie's coming out, and I read that Michael Turner book, but I don't know, none of it ever really landed. I never really thought the character was particularly interesting. But with May, it's like, nah, man, you are tragedy incarnate. And every time I go back to that, if I just feel like reading a Roger Stern book, it's like, there's real pathos here,
Okay, so No, but like all the more reason, I'm so glad you're the one who's here for this. But honestly, I especially say that because, I mean, I feel like if you were to poll 100 Supergirl fans, I think, I don't have hard data to back this up. I never do. But my sense is that I feel like for those who really gravitate toward or prefer this era of Supergirl, I would imagine for a lot of them, it's because of the Peter David series and the work that he did with her. So that's why I'm especially intrigued that it's the pre-Peter David material that stuck with you so much. I mean, I don't share quite the level of love that you have, I think, because I really did come to enjoy and appreciate the whole idea of this lost familial connection found for Superman and everything that opens up. But by virtue of the fact that this was the first Supergirl I met, and for a good number of years, this was what I thought Supergirl was. So something to be said for that. And like I always say, I said this before when we were talking about Women of Tomorrow, but like if there's a theme of this podcast, one of them is definitely me coming to terms with all of these characters that I met in really weird ways during this period of time where DC was holding firmly to the edict that Kal-El is the sole survivor of this planet. And if you're going to see a Zod or a Supergirl or a Kandor or anything else, it's going to be a different version of it.
Did you read the book Fables when it was coming out?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the things that I really like about that book is, you know, they would have rules where if a character died, but the story needed the character, a different version of that character would present itself. You know, like soap opera rules. Like it would say, oh, there was a cousin who now is filling that role. I think Charmed did this back in the day. And that's what I like about post-crisis, early 90s DC. They know the pieces of the story that they had to rely on for decades. And now they're being told, you can't use that because we think the kids of Gen X aren't going to like it. But they're like, okay, how close can we get to fill that narrative in the story? And yeah, to your point, you're seeing all these characters reintroduced under stress tests. Like, what is the fundamental, like, I want to reduce it down to its fundamental component and find a way to introduce that. It's like, I can't use the Guardian. Here's Gangbuster. I can't use Vandal Savage. Here's Mr. Z. You know, they kept doing this and doing this and doing this. And May's a perfect example of that because she's her own character. She's got this warped background, but at the end of the day, she looks like Supergirl. She sounds like Supergirl. She can be on the cover of a Supergirl comic.
Yeah, I mean, not to be reductive, but yes, at the end of the day, she remains a female counterpart to Superman with different powers to an extent, some similar ones, and the typical costume that we would associate.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's interesting because I have now very recently gone through a ton of Silver and Bronze Age stories. And yes, there are plenty, especially in the Silver Age, that do deal with her origin and Zor-El and Allura being alive and things like that. But having just gone through a lot of the Bronze Age material, the daring new adventures of Supergirl in particular, I wouldn't say her Kryptonian origins were like a driving theme of that book. I mean, it was about her being this young woman living in Chicago, going to school, battling her enemies, pursuing romance. Like it was, you know, it was its own thing. And so I guess to your point, it's like when you think about, like what are those most fundamental concepts? I mean, obviously we're removing the cousin from Krypton. She's still this female counterpart. She comes from a world that's been destroyed. So it's like thematically that aspect is still intact, right? Originally, she came from Argo City, which was in its last days. And here now she comes from this pocket universe that's been annihilated by Zod and the other criminals. And it's interesting because in that Supergirl saga, one of the issues opens with a dome over Smallville, which is all that's left of that world, just like the dome that was over Argo City. So, you know, I think we're trying to have these echoes and points of connection. Yeah. Literally in something like a dome, but thematically in other instances where they can. And no, she's not a Kryptonian relative, but I do think by virtue of Clark bringing her to the farm and entrusting her in the care of the Kents, that forges a bit of that familial connection. And definitely she comes to view the Kents as surrogate parents.
Yeah. And they're happy to have her, right? Like that's one of the things I always love. It's like, I always love the Kents, you know, when you and I started reading, the Kents were alive, they were there, they were his support system. And like he brings these people to the farm and Mom and Pa are like, oh, hey, you're a protoplasmic thing from another universe. Great. Have you eaten? Sit at our table. Tell us about things. You know, there's that great Justice League episode where he brings the Martian Manhunter and they're like, great, awesome. Do you know any carols? It's like, I love that about Mom and Pa.
Yeah. I mean, whether it's Supergirl here or Connor down the line.
Yeah,
it's
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, these are loving caretakers whose son no longer needs them in that same way. He still needs them in a different way. But yeah, it's like they're always quick to open their hearts and their home.
Yeah. They're the best of us. And, you know, when they interact with any Supergirl, but specifically May, who's had such a rough time of it, you see why Clark turned out the way he did. It's genuine. They weren't afraid of him. It's like, no, they're going to be like this with you too. And she tries to kill them halfway through the story. So.
Yeah, I mean, when you put all of this together in the Supergirl saga and then later in Action 644, where Matrix really loses it and thinks she's Superman, in both instances, she kidnaps the Kents and Lana multiple times, you know, and still they embrace her. Having just gone through all this Silver Age stuff, and we talked a lot about Superman dumping her at the orphanage and all that. So I say to myself, man, Matrix is lucky the Kents are alive in this iteration. Otherwise... Maybe not an orphanage here, given the state that she's in, but I don't know, Star Labs. I feel like he would have been dropping her off with Hamilton.
Yeah, without a doubt. That even as a kid, I would read that on the back of the trading cards, and I was like, "What do you mean he dumped her at an orphanage?"
I went on a whole thing about this, so I'll keep this super short. Okay. My issue, I talked about this, it wasn't so much that he brought her to an orphanage, especially given the era and the fact that he has these duties as Clark and Superman. What bothered me in that original issue was the way he spun it. He's like, I have a secret identity, and this could complicate things for me. It's like, bro, you could just say, like, you need someone to care for you all the time and be there for you, and I'm not able to do that. Like, it could have been more about her, but instead it was just like, you would get in my way, little girl. So.
Do you know what kills me about that is Supergirl, you know, was created by Otto Bender, and, you know, for lack of a better term, she's based on Mary Marvel from the Captain Marvel mythos. And back then it was the opposite. It was like, you know, Billy was like, I got a sister. This is awesome. Let's hang out. Let's do things together. And, you know, they built the Marvel family. They kept inviting people together. But like, you look at the Silver Age Superman books and it's like, well, there's no Superman family. There will be eventually. But right now it's like all these little pockets off doing their own thing.
Yeah. So I didn't specifically ask you to look at the Supergirl saga, but I did reread it just for my own purposes. And obviously we talked about this on the show late last year. Do you have recollection of those few issues generally or not?
Yeah, really? From back in the day.
I'll keep this quick, but I guess I always forget that before she even appears in the Supergirl saga, there are a bunch of issues with these pre-introduction teasers leading up to the Supergirl saga where Supergirl is discovered in Antarctica and she's taken into this lab and she's mostly unconscious for these little teasers. But all to say that for the months leading up to the Supergirl saga, there were these teases like, hey, there's some version of Supergirl coming. I wonder what fans at the time thought, and audience members, please, feel free to write in. Because, I mean, at that point in time, I don't know if you knew how firmly DC was holding to the last or the sole survivor of Krypton bit, maybe you figured it was going to be a different twist. But at the same time, I wouldn't be shocked if people thought like we're doing the Supergirl that we know.
Yeah.
So we had those pre-introduction teasers in 88. And then later in 88, we had the actual Supergirl saga, this 3-parter, Byrne's final arc on the titles. And you have Supergirl showing up on our Earth to enlist Superman's help to stop these Kryptonian criminals who have essentially committed genocide in the Earth of this pocket universe. Mm-hmm. What I always forget, and I don't know if audience members do too, I always forget that she initially presents as Lana, the Lana Lang of the pocket universe, who is given powers by Lex Luthor II. And there's a good bit of confusion between Supergirl and Superman in that initial meeting there. In large part because her memories had been wiped in case she fell into enemy hands. Lex had wiped her memories. And then they're slowly coming back, but there's some confusion. And she's talking about Lex Luthor as this great savior of humanity. And Superman's like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, the guy's a monster. And she's talking about Metropolis being decimated, but he shows her Metropolis is fine. So there's a bit of back and forth there, the typical confusion and battling that we often have when heroes come together. But eventually he is able to get through to her and they go back to the pocket universe. But yeah, she initially presents as the Lana Lang of that pocket universe, given powers by the heroic Lex of that world. But then what we find out at the climax of the story, after she's been blasted by the Kryptonian criminals and reverts back to that purple androgynous proto-matter state, the dying Lex of that world confesses that no, she wasn't actually Lana. Lana was one of the first casualties of this, but I used her molecular matrix to program this proto-matter, this artificial life form, and she didn't even know.
Yeah.
And then, as I said before, at the end of this, Superman brings Matrix to the Kent farm and entrusts her to their care while he goes off to deal with the ramifications of executing those Kryptonian criminals. And ultimately, he will leave in that Exile in Space arc to sort that out.
Yeah, great stuff. I like the idea of Lex of all people looking at Clark and saying, again, what of you do we need the most? And right now it's your strength, but also it's a comforting face. I have to ground this thing I created in this world that she's going to protect. So,
yeah, I guess maybe I forget about the Lana piece because I think, once she's blasted and she reverts back to the proto-matter, she's essentially a blank slate. It's not like, I don't think she retains those memories of Lana of the Pocket Universe. Cause I mean, she's like learning to form words again in once she's with the Kents.
Yeah. I never really took too much from that, though I will say I love the fact that later on when she meets Lana of Earth Composite or whatever it's called, they become fast friends. They're kind of the sisters each other didn't have. And I like that because we've talked in previous episodes where, Lana, sometimes she struggles for things to do. So I really like the idea that, May can go to her and just be like, hey, this is what's going on in my life. I don't quite know what to do. I talk to me, help me. And Lana's like, yeah, absolutely. Let's break it down.
I talk about Smallville a lot, but when it comes to listening, one podcast is at the top of my queue. Always Hold On to Smallville, hosted by our pal, Zach Moore. Zach and his guests bring tremendous insight, passion, and humor to each and every episode. And while their series rewatch has concluded, the podcast continues with more great Smallville and Superman talk. Listen wherever you get podcasts and keep an eye out for the other shows on the Always Hold On To network. My comic shop closed over a decade ago, but if there's one place where I feel that same sense of camaraderie, it's Fat Moose Comics, New Jersey's best and oldest comic book store, led by current owner Sean Hendricks. If you're looking for something and they don't have it, they can probably get it for you. They know a guy. Visit Fat Moose in Whippany, New Jersey, and be sure to reach out via the Fat Moose Comics Facebook page. I'm a parent, which means that a family-friendly comic shop is a must, and there's none better than Aw Yeah Comics. Visit one of their 3 locations, Harrison, New York, Muncie, Indiana, or Skokie, Illinois, home to our pal, Sweet Bernie. Follow them on social media and at awyeahcomics.com for news about signings, live sales, and much more. Their name says exactly how they feel about it. Say it with me now. Aw yeah. So powers-wise, right, she can fly and she's strong, but her powers are primarily psychokinetic and she can move things and deflect things and she can turn invisible. Do you like her power set generally?
Yeah. Because not only does it differentiate her from Clark, but it was the 90s. It's like, oh, hey, all your powers are going to have some weird psychic explanation like that landed. And also, it goes back to this idea of like, you are Supergirl because you look like Supergirl, but at the end of the day, you are way more, you're way more powerful. You're presenting super strength and flight and all the other powers, but you are actually way more powerful than that. And this is a way for you to focus it. So I thought that was cool because I like watching the applications, but I also like watching, you mentioned this, but she's almost like a Martian, right? She can present in any form she wants. And every once in a while, when she gets angry or she feels betrayed or whatever, her form changes to match that. Suddenly she has the very 90s spikes and everything else. And all of that is a reflection of the fact that her powers and her body are whatever she makes of them. So I thought it was great. I thought it, again, added to the theme of why she isn't what came before, but is nonetheless filling that role.
Yeah, no, well said. I think that was a smart move on their part. I think had it simply been the same set of powers, it could have been another argument. Like, why isn't it just Kara Zor-El? But it's like, no, we have a different character and powers are going to manifest differently here as well. So yeah, he entrusts her to the care of the Kents. And then, there are a bunch of issues where we'll check in on her and, we'll see her starting to resemble more of a human form under the care of the Kents. And there's a lot of talk of Clark. And eventually it does get to the point where she shapeshifts into Clark and essentially takes over his life in Metropolis while he's off in space. But then she does come into contact with the Eradicator device, and this forges some mental connection between her and Clark to the point where she then thinks she is Superman. And to your point, we do have this bit where, there's some back and forth as far as he or she. And I would say with this iteration of the character, generally, there is probably a nuanced conversation about gender fluidity and identity that you and I, as two straight, white, cisgendered men, are probably not well equipped to have. So we will acknowledge it. And I will sort of say, like, if anyone has any insight to kind of share on that with respect to this character, I would love to hear it. I would say, generally speaking, the character is referred to as she. But there is this period where Matrix is posing as Clark and then Superman and is referred to as he. And it's one of these things, like I said before, and we'll get into it more now. Matrix is off the board for 3 years. 3 years between Action 644 and the start of Panic in the Sky. They could have gone in any number of directions. I mean, the character could have remained in a male form and we could be having completely different conversations. So obviously that's not the way it went, but worth noting here. But so we get to Action 644, which is one of those rare, Matrix centric stories where we have Matrix in the form of Superman with the gray and black version of the costume and the beard. And this battle, and Superman is ultimately able to get through to Matrix, and then Matrix takes off for the stars. But I don't like, what stood out to you about that?
I like that when May becomes Superman, she doesn't just want the power and she wants the strength. It's like the thing she envies most about him is his loving family and his hometown and all the things that she lost before she even knew she wanted them. And I thought that was great because it's like, it really tells you what the character is and why. And I just was like, oh, no, I have to protect the Kents. I have to protect Smallville. I have to protect Lana. And Clark's like, I'm going to do that. That's my job, but you should join us. You should be part of the family and everyone loves you. And it's just working through that trauma. And once he gets to her, it's mostly shame that drives her away. It's like, these are very honest human emotions for, something that didn't start out as the most emotionally complex of characters. So I really liked the way it landed. I thought it was an honest conflict.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot to be said for the fact that, what Matrix does, as confused as she is to take and protect the Kents. Yeah. Right. And then, ultimately driven away by that shame. And there's a blurb at the end of that issue, like, will Matrix ever come back? Like, we don't know. And maybe they didn't know. I mean, I don't
think they did. Yeah.
I would kind of be surprised if they had that long-term of a plan. I know they certainly planned ahead, but 3 years ahead, that could have very well been the end of the character. I'm glad it wasn't, obviously, but it could have gone in another direction. They did a Funko Pop of that version.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Oh,
of the gray and black, of the Superman and the gray and black. Yeah. I didn't get it, but I have seen it at the store, and it's like of all the pops to do. That one, I mean, I'm happy that they did, but that's a freaking deep cut.
That's a deep cut. Yeah.
I mean, amazing. And then you think of some of the other things like they don't have. It's like, well, come on. But there is a Funko Pop of that.
Is there like a major one they haven't done as a Funko? Is there one you're like waiting for?
I mean, if we get into the realm of Smallville, the Smallville line. Well, actually, this is as good a point as any to say this, that for my birthday, listener and past guest Tim Bruns sent me a custom Smallville Lana Lang Funko Pop. Oh. One of the best gifts I've gotten. I have it displayed proudly. I'll show you after. Actually, maybe you can see it over my shoulder.
I can see it, yeah.
So amazing. So thank you to Tim. But so there's a Funko Pop of that. But so I mean, that was a cool and Matrix-centric issue. Then Matrix is gone for 3 years. Oh. Then we have the start of the Panic in the Sky storyline, which we recently talked about when we did our whole episode on the Milton Fine iteration of Brainiac. And Matrix is back at the start of that, and she's in this alien bar. And first, Matrix appears in the form of Superman still. Yeah. And then ultimately has this battle with Draga, who is one of the gladiators from the climax of the Exile in Space storyline, who Superman defeated and essentially shamed Draga by letting him live. So Draga wants this rematch. It's either kill or be killed. Like, he can't just live in the shame of having been defeated and spared. Yeah. And so fights Matrix in this form. And during this battle, Matrix reverts to the Supergirl look.
Yeah.
And will remain that way. And plays a fairly prominent role in Panic in the Sky, is at least initially mentally controlled by Brainiac, but of course breaks free. And as we talked about recently, really forges a bond with Draga. And when Draga is killed, the cover is an homage to Crisis 7. So instead of Superman holding Supergirl's fallen body, it's Supergirl holding Draga's fallen body. And then she'll actually assume Draga's form for the final battle of Panic in the Sky to honor him. But then, coming out of Panic in the Sky, and this leads us to the next issue that we really looked at here, she meets Lex Luthor II, who's the spitting image of the Lex of her world and falls in love at first sight.
Yeah.
And so that's Action 677, where she's taken up this romance with him, and Clark shows up to try to talk some sense into her, and things get a little heated, and she blasts him with that psychokinesis, and they have a little bit of a battle before cooler heads prevail. So what do you make of this one?
I love her relationship with Lex, not because I don't find it creepy. Of course I find it creepy. I think you're supposed to find it creepy. I love when Lex has an opportunity to, make Superman uncomfortable that isn't trying to find a way that'll physically hurt him. And he knows that there's something going on here. He knows there's a reason why this person is dressed like him, but a girl. And the fact that he's able to manipulate her and give her what she wants, he's got to know, like, this is killing him. And I really like that. I thought that was a great way of giving her something to do, but also, remind the reader at home that even though this guy claims to be on the up and up, he's clearly not. He's always going to be up to those old tricks.
Yeah, man, like, it's so messed up.
It's really
messed up. There's such an ick factor here. But we talked a lot about the John Byrne post-crisis Lex. And there is this sadistic quality to him. Like, we talked a lot about that 900 Miles from Metropolis story where he makes that indecent proposal to the waitress, like just to twist the knife and torture her. Yeah. And we also talked in the World of Metropolis miniseries where Lex is watching the security footage of a teenage, like a 15-year-old Lois being strip searched, and he's getting off on it. So this is in keeping with this iteration of the character. I have said and continue to say, I do like a bit more dimensions to my Lex, but at the same time, yes, I think this is in keeping. And if you're really looking for a Lex who is out and out evil and instances that demonstrate that, we have it here. Because the thing, there are multiple levels here with Lex Luthor II, in that he doesn't even see her as a person. And this really comes out in that miniseries. Like, she's just a thing to him, an object to manipulate, to control. And yes, to really stick it to Superman, right?
No.
He's lying about who he really is and his true nature. So there's the deceit aspect. And then really adding to the ick of it all, it's like, it's the mind of a 50-something-year-old Lex Luthor I. Now, if you're out there and if you're in a May-December romance and it works for you, that's great. Like, I'm not knocking an age gap in and of itself. Yeah. Okay. At the same time, maybe there are limits, and this is really pushing it. Yeah. And the fact that again, there's this deceit aspect, and argument to be made that she's really childlike, right? She's only been in existence for a relatively short amount of time. And like we're saying, it's not like she came with all of Lana Lang's memories intact. So it's as if she had lived a life. It's like, no, she only has few, thinking about comic book time, like a few months worth of experiences.
That's how I read it. Yeah.
Once more, if it weren't for that Roger Stern miniseries where she figures out what's going on, I think this would be tough to stomach. Like, just seeing her used consistently like this. But the fact that she ultimately finds out and fights back goes a long way.
I agree. I think, if it had been resolved, or just never resolved, if she had just found out the truth and flown away, or they had just ended the story or whatever, then no, I don't think I would have connected with it. But again, you read that story and you see the conclusion to a long arc, and you watch someone who's been used and manipulated and dehumanized, get their agency back. And it's incredibly rewarding. And I enjoy it reading it now in 2026 as much as I did back then.
And, she pops up in a good bunch of these Triangle era stories, but I feel like a good number of them, and especially the ones where she got more of a spotlight, were under the pen of Roger Stern. And so I like to think that there was always an intention, whether it was going to be that miniseries or something else, that like, no, we are going to pay this off. And knowing the quality of storytelling and the long-term planning, I would imagine that's the case, that there was some intention, like at some point, like, no, we're going to pay this off. And I'm glad that they did. Also, I don't mean to be gross or salacious, but it's like, they're doing weird sex stuff, especially with the shape shifting. They are.
Oh, see, that's interesting. I took it as they weren't sleeping together.
Oh, I disagree.
Oh, okay. My only piece of evidence for that is when May is being examined by Lex Luthor II's mother,
Gretchen.
She makes a point of covering up the camera. So I kind of read it as like, May's a child and she's really into this guy and he's willing to use her emotions. But I don't know. I always thought of Lex as like not really being into romantic love. But again, I read very few Superman comics compared to you.
No, I think it was definitely a sexual relationship.
Okay.
And not necessarily in what we looked at, and I don't have specific issues off the top of my head, but I'm 99% sure throughout those Triangle era stories, there were instances where we would check in on them in the middle of the night, and like they would be in bed, or she'd be in her nightgown with him. So it's like, I think it was that kind of relationship, which is, there's a way they could have spun this where it's like, he's interested in her, but they're not crossing that line. But no, this was really a violation in a number of ways. So so we have that aspect. But on this note, and I'm really jumping ahead here, but it's worth mentioning while we're talking about the quote unquote romance. At the conclusion of that 4-issue miniseries, where Supergirl realizes Lex has been lying, using her, she almost kills him, but for Superman's intervention, and she flies away. And Superman calls in Gretchen to care for Lex, and we'll talk more about why, because that ties into the whole clone disease and the fall of Metropolis and all of that. But Superman says to Lex, and I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, she loved you. Like, you don't know what you threw away. She really loved you. She would have done anything for you.
Yeah.
And it's one panel that's like a close-up of Lex's face. And I guess it's open to interpretation as far as like what he's actually thinking and how much that resonated. That's something I guess I'm going to argue against myself. Because what I want to say is like, I wish that could have been explored a little bit like, was there any part of him that cared in any genuine way?
Yeah.
But I don't think I don't think that was the case. And I don't think this version of the character, I think other iterations of Lex, I think maybe the current version of Lex that we're currently dealing with in the comics, maybe there it would be a little bit different. Here, I don't think it's that, but it would have been interesting. I wish that moment or that idea could have been able to breathe a little bit more, because it was really interesting, and it was just kind of just at the very end there, that quick little moment. But that was interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah. You see it almost break through. You see genuine human connection, not form, but be missed. Its absence be felt. And I like that, because you can almost be like, Lex, you have the moment. You're being given the opportunity right now, right here, to do the right thing, to prove everyone, including Superman, wrong. Are you going to do it? Well, no, but that's what you point to. That's what defines him as both a character and a villain. It's like, when those opportunities present themselves, does the human part come out? No, the human part of him is dead.
Yeah. But I would say in this era, like from 92 to 94, from when she takes up with Lex II up till this solo miniseries in 94. Yeah. Whenever we check in, there's a lot of referring to her as my Supergirl. And, I think in those stories, but especially when we get to the miniseries, she's always quick to make excuses. It's like, oh yes, he can be a little secretive, it can be a little possessive, but she's not seeing through. And obviously the fact that he so closely resembles her savior creator from that pocket universe, like there's this instant connection there that, in defense of the character, I guess does also help to account for why she's blinded to so much of this. Well, yeah, sort of, but also it's this idea of like, she doesn't have any emotional experience. And, you've seen from other appearances that she very much wants to belong. So when she's throwing herself at this guy and he was like, oh yeah, 100%, I am the person you think I am. He immediately
meets her, she's given 100%, he's given 100%, or at least that's what he's lying to do. I mean,
right.
They are in an abusive relationship. There's no other way. That's what it is. So, she learns from what's happened. She eventually gets out of that relationship. But no, it's an abusive relationship the whole time. Lex knows exactly what he's doing.
Oh yeah, for sure on his part. And one thing, just to jump back to Action 677 with the fight between Superman and Supergirl, I did like, this felt very real where Superman's trying to talk to her about like, hey, and it's interesting too, the context for all of this, like when this falls, because Superman knows everyone knows how bad Lex the First was, but this is Lex the Second, as far as everyone knows.
Yeah.
He's good, but still, it's like, there's always going to be this suspicion. But what I like is when Superman goes to talk to her, like one of the things he says is like, hey, you didn't tell her my secret identity. And she says like, oh, is that all you care about?
Yeah.
But and I like that, felt very real. It's like, he is concerned for her, but it's like, there's also this other component. And also too, it's like, he only knows Matrix so well.
Yeah.
So it'd be reasonable. It's like, hey, I need to make sure. And obviously she never would, or never does betray his confidence, but I'm glad that was brought up and that it fueled that tension between them, because that felt real.
Well, that's the other thing I really like about May is there's tension between her and Clark. Yeah, it's not like she's immediately accepted. Clark's like, well, why do you look like me? Why are you wearing that costume? I don't know anything about you. And then again, I go back to the idea that emotionally she's a child. She really is. So of course she gets offended when he asks a very responsible, basic question, and her reaction is to go, why would you think I would betray you? And he's like, I don't know anything about you. You showed up looking like my high school girlfriend and you can punch the moon. Why is this wrong? I don't want you to betray my parents. I don't want Lex to burn my farm down.
This aspect of it really does work for me. I mean, you haven't heard our episode yet on based on when we're recording this on the Silver Age, but yeah, I talked a lot about how it's all about that Silver Age Kar-El just being really sweet and wide-eyed, innocent, compliant, does whatever Superman says. He sticks her in the orphanage, tells her to keep her existence a secret. And she just goes along with it.
She wears a wig, right?
She wears a wig with the pigtails. And look, it was a little hard to really kind of buy into that version of the character. I think we're used to having her more agency, more strength. And obviously she did evolve then into the Bronze Age. But like here, it's interesting. Yes, it's a different version of the character, different context, not cousins yet. There is this connection between them, but she doesn't just go along with what he says. And that was very welcome to see, especially in contrast to the pre-crisis version.
Yeah. Yeah, but also, it's part of a larger narrative because, you obviously when you get to the Peter David stuff, it's like, no, she's the Supergirl that he calls upon when he needs help or she's accepted by the wider superhero community and she fights in all the big battles. I mean, when she gets her like white t-shirted costume, that's it. She's in everything. So, watching that evolution, watch it go from a point of unfamiliarity to, again, a representation of everything that we've come to know, but the relationship is stronger. I think the character is better for it.
This podcast is an affiliate of BCW Supplies. The next time you need to restock on comic book bags, boards, boxes, and more, be sure to use promo code FSP to save 10% on your order. That's FSP for Flat Squirrel Productions. It helps support the show too. Thank you. Step into the refraction with Drunken Avenger #1, The Volunteer, an indie comic by Rick Reason that turns the tropes upside down. 4 men died in 9 seconds. John Stevens survived, but survival has a price. Now, the government calls him a variable. The media calls him the Drunken Avenger, and the city of Meridian is caught in the crossfire between civil liberty and national security. Follow @Drunken Avenger on social media for project updates and previews. Ever wonder what would happen if a person who knew barely anything about comics decided to absorb hundreds of Superman stories from all eras and media? That's exactly what Robbo is doing on This Podcast Will Never Die, which starts with all the ways the Man of Steel stood out on the newsstands in 1938. Listen and subscribe to This Podcast Will Never Die, and you'll never look at Superman's trunks the same way again. We love digging into epic comic book runs, but what about the art of the single issue? Single Bound is a podcast series hosted by married couple Amy and Logan as they review single issues of comics, many of them starring the Man of Steel, Logan's favorite character. Listen and subscribe on Spotify and YouTube, and follow the show on Instagram at Singlebound Podcast. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, when you look at stories like the trial of Superman, when they have to go get the band together to go bring Superman home, or when we get to like critical condition and he's got the kryptonite poisoning. Yeah, I mean, she's part of that. She's part of that super family.
Yeah.
So in this stretch from 92 to 94, and obviously the death and return of Superman looms large there. You know, during death, she wants to get involved, but Lex keeps her at bay until Doomsday's really you know, banging on the door, and then she intervenes. And I've talked about this before, but yeah, Doomsday just punches her in the face, and her face just turns into that blob. I've said this before, but like that was my introduction to this character.
Yeah, same.
Like, what is this? And she reverts to that proto matter form, but then ultimately, at Lex's insistence, is able to pull herself back together. I think he couldn't stand the sight of her like that.
Oh yeah. He hates being reminded that, you know, what she is to him isn't what she really is. What she really is this thing who's looking for identity. So yeah, it terrifies him because he knows he's Lex Luthor, you know, no matter what, he remains Luthor the First. But you know, he's watching May, and it's like, oh, you don't know what you are. What bigger fear does Lex have than that?
Yeah, exactly. And then, you know, we'll find out later that while she's in that proto-matter form, there's residue left on Lex's jacket that he puts over her. And that's what's used to make those clones in the miniseries. And then, you know, she steps up during a funeral for a friend. Metropolis needs a hero. She gets involved when Superman's body is taken by Cadmus, and she retrieves it. There's also early on, after the introduction of Superboy, where Lex like pimps her out, essentially uses her to try to get Superboy to come over to WLEX instead of GBS. And obviously he ultimately doesn't go for it. But yeah, I mean, just another instance of trying to use her to woo the young clone.
Yeah, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, Lex sees everyone as, what can you do for me now? And the fact that he is willing to manipulate her to get to that end, it just makes it so rewarding when she finally sees him for what he is. Yeah.
And right after Reign, I've always loved this, where she shapeshifts into Clark.
Yeah.
Right. And then Clark is quote unquote found and saved under the rubble. And that's how we're able to bring Clark back to life and preserve the dual identity. But earlier than that, and one of the other key spotlight issues that we looked at was the Supergirl Team Luthor special. So this was during that period of time when they suspended publication of the main titles, but they put out specials like Legacy of Superman and this. And we were texting about it, and you had a funny take on Lex's plan in this. Want to share?
Yeah. So I thought it was funny then, and I still think it's funny now, where, you know, he's pretending to be his own son, but mentally he is still himself. You know, he's still there. So I just thought it was funny that after, obviously, it's decades in the real world, it's only a few years in the comic, but after decades of trying to kill Superman finally dies. He's gone. You could do whatever you want to do. There's no one, quote unquote, standing in your way. And your big, huge plan is to take your mall cop Iron Man, go into the mayor's office and be like, can we be of service, sir? And it's just like, this was it. This was your huge strategy. Like, you should be taking over the world now that no one's there to stand in your way.
I know. It's like, you gotta dream bigger, bro. It's like, this is what you wanted Superman out of the way for all these years? Just that?
It was very strange. And, you know, it's funny too, because that one issue tries to make Lex some sort of protagonist. And you can just see that Lex Luthor II doesn't seem to have been the most well plotted out arc. You know, I don't know if there was a grandmaster plan, but it's like, okay, you want to avoid the sins of your father, but it's like, well, what are you going to do now? Because you're doing all the same things that he was doing. You just haven't gotten caught yet. So,
yeah, no, I know. It's but it's like, now he has this new facade intact, right? But yeah, the Lex Luthor II thing. I've always been so intrigued by that. And I continue to remain kind of baffled that, we've had these other media adaptations like Lois and Clark and like Smallville, where you have the actor playing Lex Luthor leave the show, and it's like you have an avenue here to have Lex on the show by doing this plot, but I don't know, maybe it still feels too outlandish for these shows. But
do we know where the Australian thing came. That's what always throws me.
I've said this a million times, but it's like, as a kid, by that point when I started reading, like, they didn't talk about that anymore. So it's like, I didn't know I never read him in my head with an Australian accent. And then now going back, it's like, I always remind myself, like, he sounds Australian. It was just, that was part of the cover story that he had grown up
in
there.
Australia.
You know, I guess they wanted someplace remote. It's like, that's why no one ever knew about him. But it's very specific.
Oh man.
So in that special, I guess what stood out to me is towards the end of that, Lex has Supergirl shapeshift into the Helgramite to essentially get a confession out of this LexCorp employee who had tried to kill Lex. And it really takes a lot out of Matrix to shapeshift in that way. And this also comes up in the miniseries. It's like, it's one thing to change her basic features or clothing through this molecular rearrangement, but when she's really adding mass, like becoming a larger version, that's painful for her. And at the end, Lex has this line, he's like, I wish I had 100 of you.
Yeah.
And then that leads us into this 4-issue miniseries just called Supergirl by Roger Stern and June Brigman. And this was part of the Reign of Tomorrow publishing initiative coming out of Reign of the Superman, where you had this miniseries, you had the launch of the Steel ongoing, and you had the launch of the Superboy ongoing, Reign of Tomorrow. I love it. I love still those house ads and everything. I love it. But yeah, I mean, this really is the climax of this whole journey that we've been talking about here. And yeah, but for this, I don't know that we'd be having this conversation. This is where, it really all comes to a head. One of the things by the way, I hadn't reread this in full, maybe ever. Like, I read it as it came out. I remember having these issues. And during one of our Triangle era events, I definitely like skimmed through it, but I don't think I had fully reread the entire thing until now. And I was really impressed with this. And it so fits into the Battle for Metropolis and Fall of Metropolis storyline that was going on in the main Superman books, where you had the clones of Metropolis, including Lex II, dying from this plague.
Yeah.
And that plays out over the course of this miniseries, where Lex is getting sick and he's using this hologram of himself to preserve the illusion that he's vital and healthy, but he's actually not. So not the most important thing of this miniseries, but I did like how it tied into what was going on. And that too brought everything to a head, because Lex, part of the reason for his experimentation, his cloning of Supergirl, yes, to have all of these copies of her from his own purposes, but also to try to save himself from this clone disease. So I like that aspect.
Yeah, it's a great storyline. If you were reading it when it was coming out and you're reading all the other books, it helped carry a plot. But again, I wasn't, so I was able to get a beginning, a middle, and end just in those 4 issues.
Yeah, but Lex is having all of these tests performed on Supergirl to study her and her powers. And you mentioned that scene with Gretchen Kelly where she's got all of these, has got her hooked up to all this stuff, but notices that there's a camera and realizes that Lex is skeevy, pervy Lex is watching this. So she blocks the camera, which I appreciated.
Yeah. And
Supergirl is sent off to Singapore for more tests. And this is where now everything starts to kind of fall apart. This facade that Lex has put up, because I guess there are a few dominoes that start to fall, which I liked. It wasn't just one thing. It was sort of a bunch of things now starting to kind of
well, no one hands it to her, right? It's like, I really like that she figures it out on her own.
Yeah, so it's like on the way there, she stops and visits the Kents, and they're once again issuing their warnings. She's polite, but she leaves, right? She's not hearing it. She's not ready for it yet. Early on, when she's overseas, she meets Elizabeth Persk, the third wife of the original Lex, who issues a bit of a warning there. There's also this business about her being followed. There's a scene where she's seemingly attacked, but it turns out it's Lex's people. They're once again trying to study her powers and see what happens when she's surprised. But enough of these things are happening where she's getting suspicious. Still not quite ready to pin it all on Lex. There are moments where it's like, well, his people might be doing this, but it's not necessarily him. She's not all the way there, but she gets suspicious enough where she, I think, shapeshifts into one of the other LexCorp employees, and then goes outright invisible, and then is able to hear what everyone says about her, about how she's Lex's pet, the bimbo, right? And she hears one of the scientists talking about Operation Protomatter, which will bring us to the climax of this. But did you like how that played out as far as her starting to kind of open her eyes to this?
Yeah, very much, because it takes the emotional naivete that I mentioned before and it begins to mature it, right? It's this thing where it's like, you can't force her to feel the way you do. She's not going to. So it's like the gender thing. It's like it's nebulous to begin with. And then as she decides what she wants and what's making her happy, she pursues it. It's the same thing here. She wants nothing more than to be of service. She thinks Lex can do that. She wants to give him all the love she has. But, you know, she's also not dumb, and she's learning. And as she watches everything else, she starts to put the pieces together on her own. And when she figures it out, it's funny because you realize that everyone else is actually terrified of her because they know Superman's not going to commit a violent act. He's going to respect the letter of the law. He's got stakes here. You know, none of that applies to May. Like, they're hoping it will, but they don't know that it will. So I really like the idea that when everyone figures out what's going on, you actually get like a genuine emotional outburst. And it's like, oh no, she's going to tear this place apart.
100%. And we'll get to that, but I don't want to forget this. So on the note of wife number 3, Elizabeth. And at the end of the story, Supergirl will go to work with her, and Elizabeth will be a bit of a mentor, which is nice. That only, I think, goes so far because then we get into the Peter David territory. But I like that. You and I know we're both big fans of Who Killed Jimmy Olsen by Fraction and Lieber. We had a magnificent conversation about it. I continue to sing its praises. And I'm saying to myself, you know, in this era, there were repeated mentions of Lex having these 8 wives.
Yeah.
I don't think, off the top of my head, I don't think we see any of them other than this one. And then, of course, he'll marry Contessa and we'll have that business. But I'm saying, I'm just going to put this out there in case anybody's listening. Get Fraction and Lieber to do a story on Lex's wives. And I don't know if it's an issue on each wife or we're sort of, you know, they're all kind of mixed together. I don't know what the structure of it would be, but I feel like there's potential because when Lex II realizes that Elizabeth is in the mix here, he has some line about how like, oh yeah, I needed her back in the day for her social connection. Yeah. And I'm just saying to myself, like, yeah, like what's the deal with all these wives and a specific reason why he pursued them and what happened to them? Yeah. I feel like this is could be a very compelling untapped story. Yeah, especially considering who the Post-Crisis Lex Luthor is based on. I desperately want to read that too. But I'm saying like Fraction and Lieber on the many wives of Lex Luthor. Please, come on. Please give us that, please. Right? Yes. You sold me. Yeah, 100%. Oh, I really think that's, all right. Well, maybe we'll put that out there into the universe here. But yeah, so now she learns what Operation Protomatter is. She's able to impersonate one of the scientists and infiltrate this Adirondacks secret lab. The imagery, it's on the cover and then it's in the issues of all of the clones in those pods. Yeah. Seared into my brain from when I was 7 and reading this. And not, it's not like, oh, it was freaky. It wasn't even that, but it was just like, it's so indelible in my head. Like when I think of this version of Supergirl, like that miniseries, those clones in the pods. It really is a haunting image because the way they choose to show the clones, it's like a field of wombs. Yes. Like it's incredibly suggestive imagery and they're all in a fetal position and there's all slight different variations on a theme and she's surrounded by them. And again, it's this person searching for identity and she comes in and it's almost like a funhouse mirror. And in each one is like, well, this is what you could have been. This is what you could have ended up as. This is how Lex sees you. He wants every variation. He doesn't even think you know how to be a person. So it really is haunting. And I'm with you, man. That stuck with me. Yeah. And you see, it's like you already knew it, but then you really see how little he thinks of her, that she could be so easily copied or replaced. Yeah. Well, I like that too, because there's another bit of meta commentary on there. You know, back in the day, especially during the death of Superman, he was everywhere. He was everywhere. I mean, he's Superman. He's always going to be everywhere, but his popularity definitely ebbs and flows. And I saw that specifically as Lex's take on like the commodification of Superman, because he doesn't just want, he says, I wish I had 100 of you. I wish I had 1,000 of you, but it's like, he wants 1,000 people with that symbol that will respond to him and can have variations and will do whatever he says because he's Lex. And why shouldn't he be in charge? And why shouldn't he control the destiny of what that symbol means? So I really, really like that because it's another messed up thing that only Lex would really think to do. And I love it. Yes. And the other thing is like, as much as Matrix went along and bought his lies and supported him, I think there were still enough instances where she questioned him, or where she went off and did her own thing, or when they're following her, but she's able to duck them so that she could go visit the Kents. Like enough moments where he doesn't know what she's doing for a second, where it's like, that's not, he needs more control. Yeah. And this is going to be the way for him to do that. So yeah, Happerson releases these clones, and they battle, and you get all these different variations. And at this point, it's at this point in the story, right? She's in her berserker rage mode with the spikes and everything.
Yeah. Again, I don't know if he's trying to comment on looks in the industry in general, but it's so funny. She grows these completely useless spikes out of like armbands and leg bands that appear on her costume. It's like you're doing a parody of that period of time, except, it's Roger Stern, so he knew what he was doing back then. But that's the type of costume you expect to see now if the story was set back then. So
yeah, and the clones are destroyed in the battle, and then one of the pods opens and releases a Lex Luthor II.
The ginger chin strap.
Yeah, so I mean, you see, in addition to wanting to control this army of Supergirls, is also trying to cure himself of this clone disease. And then she takes the fight to him. I love this in the final issue where she's taking apart all of his homes around the world, obviously making sure that they're not occupied. She's not killing anybody.
But isn't that great too? Because it's such a, I want to say petty, but I don't mean petty in a bad way. I mean petty in a very human way. Yeah. Right? Like, what am I going to do? He's got a bunch of houses. He doesn't necessarily value them, but I know where they are. I'm going to destroy them all. I'm going to destroy them all. And it's funny too, because she's not even doing it because she thinks he values the houses. She's doing it because she wants to watch him squirm. Right? He can't say Supergirl is doing this because I cloned her and I'm my father and everything. So like every time she does it, and she slowly but surely works up to doing it in a populated area where he's not going to be able to explain it away. And it's just like, this is so petty and so human, and I love it, because not only is it not something Clark would do, but again, it's something she's had to learn and arrive at on her own. And I love watching her mature in that way.
Absolutely. And then she finally tracks down Lex himself and doesn't recognize him at first. Yeah. Because he's been so debilitated and diminished by this clone disease. And maybe this was the most heartbreaking part. It's like, she does have sympathy for him. Yeah. And he still just continues to lie, and then tries to knock her out with gas or what have you. And that, I think, really is the last straw, where she's like, you're still lying. After all of this, and throws him out the window. But then Superman is there to save him, and that's what we had talked about before. There's the line where Superman says to Lex, like, I learned a long time ago never to wish ill on anyone. That too, for whatever reason, seared into my young 7-year-old mind. Yeah. And I've never wished anyone ill. Like, I don't know, there was some, like, I would I don't know. I learned a lesson. Man. I don't think I had wished anyone ill prior to that, but I definitely never did since. Like, nope, never. But I don't know, for whatever reason, I think part of it was, I think I had the sense of like, well, why? Like, how did he learn that? I think that's what there was something intriguing to me about like, what was it specifically that prompted that? Anyway.
Well, you're a better man than me, because I definitely wished ill on people as a heavyset 7-year-old, and continue to as a middle-aged man. So.
Okay. Well, I took Superman's words to heart, and then we end on Supergirl at the farm, reconnecting with the Kents, and then in Paris, I believe, right, with Elizabeth first.
Yeah, and then she goes back, and again, it's funny too, because you get to see she got out of an abusive relationship, and again, she gave him every opportunity. It's like just tell me there was some part of you that meant something, and then when she realizes there wasn't, she says, okay, wait a second. What did I think was here? What did I value in that? Let me go back to the places I already had it. And one of the places she goes back to is the third wife. And she's like, well, yeah, I learned that the hard way. You've learned that the hard way. We now have that in common. What else can we do? And I was like, this is great.
Yeah. There's a later issue of Action written by Dave McElhinney, and it's Supergirl visiting Smallville, and then she has to protect the town. But it's at this point, she's still working with Elizabeth, but she's kind of checking in. Still a little period of transition, but it's very close in time, I think, to the Peter David series. But and I do know Elizabeth does make at least a few appearances in the Peter David series.
Yeah, she does.
But I like this angle. Yeah, it's like they've been through something very, very similar. Yeah. And like I keep saying, I mean, where we are context-wise with the super titles, it's like at the culmination of that Fall of Metropolis storyline, like that's it for Lex Luthor II.
Yeah.
Like he's exposed, then he's in that cryogenic chamber until he makes the deal with Neuron, and then he gets his restored body and all that, and then he marries the Contessa. This was the end of the road.
Yeah.
Like this was the end of the road for Lex II. And so you had to have, I'm so glad. And like I said, I don't know how long this miniseries or the events of this miniseries were planned, but however it came to be, I'm really glad that they did this. There's also a bit after this where, like from 94 to 95, she has a brief stint as a member of the New Titans.
The New Titans, yeah, I saw that.
Did you ever read any of those?
I don't think I've ever read a Teen Titans comic. I gotta be honest with
I've read
you.
plenty of Teen Titans, but yeah, not that series specifically. I just looked at the covers. But according to maidofmight.net, her appearances on the team were unremarkable.
Is that the one? Is Kyle Rayner? Is that the
I
team
think so.
he's on? Maybe I
so.
should read that book. All right.
I think so. But yeah, so we have that. And then very shortly thereafter, we're into Peter David territory. But yeah, I mean, I think when you put it all together, and especially with this miniseries, seeing Lex for what he is, fighting back, taking control of her life, and starting to get into these ideas about, what is she? I mean, she started as this artificial life form, but she's had all of these experiences. Like Gretchen Kelly says, like she's not a wind-up doll. Like she has feelings.
Yeah.
So there are some interesting questions that are at least now broached. And then obviously Peter David will really get into them.
And it's an interesting thing too. You know, what I took from it is when you're around Superman for that long, he has a positive effect on you. And I always like that because this character started as someone who had nothing else, who endured unimaginable tragedy on her home world, but she ends as a legitimate superhero, and that's because she was exposed to the Man of Tomorrow. So,
absolutely. We have a few patron comments here. Jeff says, I'm really eager for the Matrix episode. Well, Jeff, I hope it has delivered for you. Like you, Kara is the number one Supergirl to me, but Matrix/Linda Danvers has a special place. Given how divergent her character is, I still hold out hope that DC will bring her back. I mean, if we have enough Superboys to have them reign, why not another Supergirl?
And CRL, bring them both back.
I mean, audience members recently heard I interviewed Sterling Gates, and he had whole plans for a Death of Supergirl storyline, and Kara was going to go to hell and meet the Linda Danvers Matrix version, and they were going to be in the book together moving forward. So there was an attempt at some point, but I would say it's like we are at this point in DC currently where it's like everybody's kind of in play and all these legacy characters are kind of all together. So yeah, I don't know.
She came back during Convergence, which was a nice surprise.
Right on. But yeah, I mean, my instinct is, yes, I would love to bring her back. And I think if the right creator had the right take and had a story that they wanted, yes, I mean, of course I would be on board with it. But there is a part of me that wonders, do I just want it because it's like, oh, it's Matrix. It's like, or has that ship sailed? Did she have her moment in time? I don't know, but I'm open to it.
I am constantly surprised by the fact that the writer Steve Orlando appears to have the exact same nostalgia as I do. So if there's any chance that he is ever going to listen to this, I know you have a May story in you. Please give it to us.
Fair enough. And then Jared says, I mean, I think this points a bit more to what we're going to be talking about, but we'll include it here. Jared says, I read through a fair bit of the Peter David run, and while I can definitely see why it's considered so convoluted and strange, I find myself liking it because of its weirdness. I found myself enjoying Matrix/Linda's character arc, and I found myself invested in her family and friends as well. Overall, while I'm glad that eventually we do end up getting the classic Kara Zor-El back in the 2000s, I think I would also like to see Linda be able to come back as her own character. So another vote for a return.
Preach.
Yeah. And once more, we're going to be getting deep into the Peter David series because I've only ever read the beginning and end, essentially.
Yeah.
And I'm aware of the broad strokes of the series, and I've popped in and out, especially when issues of Supergirl crossed over with like Young Justice or the Superman titles. But this will be the first time that I read the entire thing from start to finish, and I'm excited.
Yeah, I think you should be. I mean, listen, Peter David, God rest his soul, when he was given enough runway, man, he went to some great places. He used the comic medium for everything it was worth. So I think it's going to be a good time.
I'm glad. I really enjoyed this, and I'm really happy that we gave the pre-Peter David Matrix version the spotlight here. Because I went back and forth, like, is this just a little prologue to the Peter David episode? I'm glad it was its own episode because this was the version of the character for a good number of years, even though, like we're saying, she wasn't as prominent as I think a lot of us remember it. But maybe that's a testament to the character that we kind of look back as, oh yeah, Matrix, like for myself, at least, oh yeah, like Matrix did all this stuff.
Yeah.
It was relatively minimal, but she still kind of loomed large in her own way.
I mean, listen, she's part of a legacy, right? You know, she's part of an unbroken line that goes back to the 50s, and that, you know, we're talking about this now. I just watched the Supergirl trailer last week. So it's like this character still exists, and she did her part during that period of time when everyone was saying he can't have a cousin, he can't have whatever else. And, you know, the rest of them, Byrne, Stern, they took a step back and said, okay, well, what can Supergirl be when she can't be his cousin? And I thought they had a very satisfactory answer.
My last two things. One, just once again, to sing the praises of Roger Stern, because yes, Byrne introduced this version. I genuinely wonder where Byrne would have taken this character. Like when I talked to Mike Carlin about this, it seems like it was very unknown what Byrne's plans were. And he left so abruptly that it seems like it was kind of a question mark. And obviously this Supergirl did appear in comics written by the other creators, but like we're saying, Roger Stern really did the most with her, and certainly that miniseries. So very grateful to him for fleshing this character out, giving this emotional payoff that we keep talking about. The other thing is, even though she's not popping up just yet, and maybe that will change down the line. Maybe there will be such a surge in interest in this episode, and everyone's going to be talking about it. DC will have no choice but to take notice. But credit where credit's due. In Mark Waid's New History of the DC Universe, she is included. She's in it.
Oh, nice.
I'm almost positive it's just in the back matter, but she's there. And there's a blurb about this Matrix version posing as Supergirl for a period of time after the death of the pre-crisis Kara Zor-El. So, you know, all right, posing. It's like, no, she was the Supergirl, but that's okay. At least she's incorporated, right? Because there could have been a version of this where she's just like wiped away. So I'm glad that's not the case.
Yeah, and again, it's not an inaccurate statement. The old one died, the new one hadn't yet been introduced, and she was the one who had the mantle in between. So I don't know. I think that's fair. And again, too, it's like, you know, we're fans of the Spider-Man clone. So it's like, you know, you can pretend to be the character for so long before someone looks at you and says, no, you are acting like the character. So
You know, we do have quite a lot of affection for the Ben Rileys and the Matrix characters.
Yeah. The 90s, you know, people laugh at us, but if you were a kid like we were, it was the coolest stuff in the world, man. It's easy to look back and make fun of it as an adult, but living at it at the time, I was like, this is great. I want that hoodie. That's all right. Maybe I'll end on this, because I think that's an important point where, yes, now as adults looking back and especially rattling off all of the plot points of the origin and the evolution of Matrix, it's like, it's insane. Yeah. Oh, completely insane. Yeah. And I do, if there's any roadblock to adapting the character or to bringing the character back, it's a bit much to kind of have to lay out. But that aside, it's like, as a kid, I mean, you didn't have that feeling. You were just like, this is what it is. And you were interested. And when Roger Stern would give you one of those recaps during the story, which were always great and effective and never just felt like you were being told back plot. It felt like it was okay. Like we're getting caught up, but it's all part of the ongoing story. He can compress so much continuity in such an organic way that it makes you want to go on that journey with him. Yeah. And when we would get that, it was great. And you were all in on it. And it wasn't like, oh, this is weird, it's too complicated. No, like we were all in on it. And so there's something to be said for the purity of that experience that we had as kids. Hey man, I look back on a lot of this stuff and I'm the first one to say, okay, some of this stuff was not very good, but when it holds up, you know? And again, I mean, I feel dumb, but it's like, it's Roger Stern, you know, he's written the best Avengers story of all time. He wrote the best Spider-Man story of all time. We're not talking about we're talking about a guy who's in the top 10 writers of all time. So it's like no surprise that this random 4-issue miniseries he did is really good, but it holds up. I have no complaints reading it, you know, 40 years after it was released, 30 years after it was released. Yeah. I would love to see a new collection of it. That would be great. That would be great. Yeah, I had to dig through some long boxes to get all these together. So I would buy that collection happily. I think you package together, honestly, this set, like the Supergirl Saga, at Action 644, Action 677, the Team Luthor special, and that miniseries. You get a nice little arc there. Maybe you have a little
little text page here and there to kind of fill in some gaps, but I don't know that you even need that. I think that'd be a nice collection.
Put right on the cover. See the movie? Now buy this, and there you go. Let's sell let's move a couple volumes, guys.
See the movie? Want something completely different? There you go.
I just figure, I don't know anything about this movie, but this is the moment, right? Like I feel like if anyone out there has got a Supergirl story they want to tell, now's probably the easiest time to get it greenlit, and that's got to go double for collected editions. So.
Yeah, it'll be cool to see. Well, thank you very much for joining me for this.
Thank you. I can't believe I had an excuse to talk about May. I was very excited when you said we were actually doing this.
Absolutely. So thank you, Mike. Thank you, audience. Always appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you keep coming back as a Supergirl fan journey continues. Until then, as always, it's about what you do. It's about action. Support the show and receive exclusive content by becoming a member at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato. Rewards include our DCU spinoff podcast, advanced listens, sponsorship opportunities, and more. My sincere thanks to all patrons. Please rate and review the podcast via your platform of choice, subscribe so that you never miss an episode, and continue the conversation by joining us on social media. By popular demand, Digging for Kryptonite merch is available at our TeePublic store. Visit the link in the show notes to get your DFK shirts, hats, mugs, and more. Flat Squirrel Podcast is also home to Lighting the Bat Signal, a Batman fan journey, which applies the signature Digging for Kryptonite approach to the Dark Knight, as well as another exciting episode in the Adventures of Superman, now in its final year covering the classic George Reeves series. Subscribe today. Digging for Kryptonite is a Flat Squirrel production. Key art by Isaiah Simmons and theme music by Dan Pritchard.